Today, we welcome prog songwriter and guitarist Chris Herin to promote his debut solo album, Hidden in Plain Sight, under the Herin moniker. So, Chris, welcome to Metal Mayhem ROC.
Well, thanks, Walt. I appreciate it.
So, I'm going to open with a little icebreaker, but I'm located in New Jersey. And it was funny. I was telling one of my best buddies who also has a podcast that I was going to have you on. And he said, you know what? He goes, I was walking around ProgStock and I'm pretty sure I saw him over at that ProgStock. So I see you were down in my neck of woods in Rutherford, New Jersey, a couple weeks ago.
I was standing there enjoying all the great music and meeting lots of new people because we didn't play. I play in two bands also, Tiles and Discipline.
Yep.
So I was there with Matthew Parmenter, the lead singer of Discipline, because they announced Discipline for next year's ProgStock. Anyway, that's why we were there hovering.
Yeah. How was your overall experience for the weekend? Because I know there was some of the bands backed out, and Michael Sadler had some little bit of issues. I heard. I mean, we give him all the credit in the world for getting up there on stage just a month or two after his surgery. So, was it a good weekend for you?
Yeah, I was, with Ian Crichton, the guitar player from Saga. He had some kind of mishap and broke his arm or something. So that took care of 6x6 being able to play. And fortunately, they had someone to do his parts when Saga played. But you're right, I had a chance to visit with Michael Sadler briefly because he sings on one of the songs on my album, and
Yeah.
you could tell that he was pretty tired. And you're right, he was a trooper because the Saga set he sounded great, but he was
Yeah.
tired for sure.
That's what my friends say. I say, you know what? You got to give a guy that just tells you a lot about his character, how much he cares about his career, his music, his band, his band members, and the fans. Like, probably 99 out of 100 guys would say, you know what, I can't do it this time. I'll see you next year. But says a lot about the guy.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So, but hey, Chris, I'm really happy we're going to get a chance to talk about your new album. It's really, really good. I've listened to it a bunch of times. And I think there's a lot of reasons why this thing is so appealing. I mean, of course, there's the concept itself, right? Your personal accounts of your experiences and your journey alongside your dad with his Alzheimer's battles. I mean, very brave of you to put that out into, let's say, the public eye. And then, of course, you have all these great songs to go with it and so many fantastic guest musicians that come on there. I'm really curious to find out what your history is with some of these guys and how they landed on these songs and what they brought to the table. And then, of course, there's the legendary team of producer Terry Brown and Hugh Syme that brings all of the art and the imagery to life. And they also play on the album a little bit too. So we have so much to talk about. But maybe my first question to you is, what made you to decide to be comfortable enough to write this body of work, about something that's so personal? Like, this typically in any other family would be friends, family, it would be very difficult to put pen to paper for something like this. So just why'd you go out and do that?
Well, I didn't set out with that as a goal. And my dad has been gone since 2011. So, and he suffered from the disease for about 10 years. And when Tiles kind of went on hiatus in 2018, when our vocalist Paul retired, I had these songs laying around in various uh, forms of completion. I thought, geez, they weren't necessarily, they could have been Tile songs, I suppose, but I thought, well, I'll just go ahead and finish these songs off because why not? And then when I started writing the lyrics, I just gravitated in that direction for some unknown reason, really. And once a couple of the lyrics were completed, it dawned on me that I was kind of going off in that vein. And I guess I never really considered it um, as being brave. So I appreciate your compliment there. Um, I just felt like they were little events and stories throughout that whole period of time. And certainly, I don't say anything that would, embarrass my dad. Um, along those lines. And I actually thought some of the lyrics, I mean, once you know the theme of the album, they kind of, will direct people in a certain direction of interpretation. Um, but they also, I think, have enough ambiguity so that you can relate to them on some of them on a different level.
Sure.
So I guess to summarize my answer there, it's I never set out to do a solo album necessarily, and I didn't purposely start out to make it the theme about Alzheimer's. But once I got going, I felt pretty strong about it. And then the idea of bringing in all these special guests, because between me and Terry, we have quite a few connections. And I thought, well, it would be nice to give something back. So that's why the proceeds will go to the Alzheimer's Association. And here we are.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is interesting how you clarified that some of this music goes back in time and that your father actually has been gone for quite some time. Um, you know, maybe just on a personal night, like, before your dad was stricken with the disease, like what was your relationship? Was it a normal father-son growing up as a kid and he raised you and then you became to adulthood? Did you have a typical father-son relationship with him?
It was pretty normal. And that's why I think three of the songs kind of deal with before we knew that he had the disease, because we didn't have anybody in either side of my family that had Alzheimer's or dementia. So when his behavior started getting weird, we didn't even think of that. We kind of thought he was going through some difficulties at work. He was in his mid 60s and maybe he was considering winding down into retirement. So we just thought, well, things aren't going good. Maybe he's a little depressed or something. So that's where songs like Warning Signs, The Darkest Hour, there is a little bit of a timeline to the lyrics and as his condition played out. But when we finally got the diagnosis, it was like, oh, well, of course. But up till then, I was totally clueless. And as you can imagine, that's a little embarrassing to not
Well,
catch on to that.
it's so true. I mean, my father, I'm blessed to still have him. He's 87 plus, and I've corrected him at points, because he's a funny, vibrant guy, and he'll just say, "Oh, you know what? Me and my dementia, and that kind of thing," and I'll laugh at him and say, "Pops, like, be careful what you say because you truthfully don't have dementia, you know." Yeah, but they just throw these terms around, and but it could be a little bit misleading. But he says, "All right, well, I don't have dementia. I got CRS." I said, "Well, what's CRS?" I can't remember
Right,
shit.
right. I've heard
But I
that
guess,
too. And
yeah,
and that confuses the matter too, because it's part of the natural aging process.
right,
You forget a little bit here and there, and you don't want to overreact because now that there's a fairly significant awareness of the dementia and Alzheimer's, because the organizations do great work and there's lots of uh, publicity has come such a long way from 13 years ago. Um, but it's like, well, it's, kind of a natural thing at some point. I mean, even when I was young, I'm not so young anymore, but even when I was young, I would forget stuff. The classic, well, I'm going down to the basement to get something. You get down to the basement, you think, well, what was I supposed to get? Um, anyway, but I'm
yeah,
glad your dad
that's
is still here and he's got a sense of humor for sure.
yeah, exactly. Like I said, I could make parallels in some of the lyrics in your songs, and I think of myself and my father, me at 54, him at 87, and that kind of thing. But that's definitely hits you on a personal level. But um, Chris, let's talk about Terry Brown and Hugh Syme. I mean, listen, these guys are icons. Of course, they're synonymous with the legacy of Rush. I mean, Terry was there from very early days up until and through the Signals album. He was there all the way through. But, it's not like those guys just are, oh, I'm going to reach out to somebody and see if they're available. there's got to be some back history that you've had with them, but how does one decide to do a solo project and then land these two icons?
Well, Tiles has worked with Terry since 1996 when he mixed our second album, Fence the Clear. And at that point, we were coming off some pretty respectable success from our first album for an independent release. It got picked up in Europe by Polydor and licensed in Japan. So we thought the next logical step would be and it was a very good sounding album, but we thought, well, maybe, even stepping that up another notch with, someone of Terry's caliber. And I had a list of 5 people. I think it was the guy that had worked a lot with Kansas, one of the guys in Saga, actually, because I think Generation 13 had just come out and it's a fabulous, fabulous sounding album. Anyway, I called Anthem Records, Rush's management and record company, and I said, I'm looking for Terry Brown to see if he'd be interested in doing a project. If he is, here's my number and stuff. And then he called and we talked, and I sent him some demo stuff, and he really liked it. And that was the start of working with Terry all these years, because he mixed the third album and has been produced our 4th, 5th, and 6th album. So we've got quite a lengthy relationship with him, and he's a fabulous guy, and his production and engineering and mixing is as good as you would expect for a guy that helped create moving pictures, right? It was with our third album, Terry got done mixing it, and he said, boy, this is a really, really good album. It deserves a step up maybe in the artwork department. And back in the 90s, it wasn't such a badge of honor to be associated with Rush, if you can believe such a thing. Because as a guitar player, I was very influenced by Alex Lifeson and those open chords and the arpeggios, and the drummer was busy, and the songs didn't sound like specific Rush songs, but you could tell where part of our influences came. So back then it was, we were called a clone band, and who likes to hear any of that 1978 progressive music junk? And but anyway, so initially I had thought, well, geez, we can't use Hugh Syme too, right? That just doesn't look good. Like we truly are just, oh well, Rush did this, so we'll do it, and that kind of thing. But Terry pushed us a little bit in that direction, and then once I thought about it, I thought, geez, well, how many people really get an opportunity to work with Hugh Syme? So he did the cover for the artwork and everything for Presence of Mind in 1999. And once you start working with guys of this caliber, it's just hard to say, oh no, I don't think we'll use you next time, Terry, or I don't think we'll use you. So all these years, we've used both of those gentlemen for the audio and the visual.
That's great. I was not aware of that back history, but makes a whole lot of sense. And I got to say, I mean, Rush is a top 5 band for me. We've had many debates on our show, Metal Mayhem ROC. We even did like a trying to narrow down the top deep tracks. We had 4 of us on a panel, and we tried to nail it down to like 4+1, which is just a near impossible thing just to do deep tracks. And here I am thinking I'm picking songs that are deep, and I'm getting called out, and they're going, you know what, Walt? No, that's not a deep track. They play that on 7 of 10 tours, and there's a performance video for that one that doesn't qualify. So with Rush, you could always go a little bit deeper, but how that goes.
All right. Well, I suppose the album that is almost guaranteed to provide deep tracks would be Caress of Steel.
Yep. Yeah, that would be probably the maybe if probably the one that people know the least. But you're right. When you think about the 90s, I mean, I started following Rush as a teenager in 87. So Hold Your Fire. So that was my starting point for those guys. So I lived through my teens and 20s with Presto, with Roll the Bones, with Counterparts, going to see all those shows. It was the bonding time in your teens and your 20s, jumping in the car, drinking beers in the parking lot, going on road trips. It's what memories are made of. And I'm so happy I had a chance to do that stuff, just like I'm sure you did. But going back to Hugh, I think of the album cover, right? And I wanted you to talk about that because face value, you look at it, there's 16 pieces of what looks like crinkled paper, like on a black backdrop, yet most of them are blue, 8 or 9 of them. So talk about the album cover.
Okay, happy to. Uh, I was really, I mean, you can't see my hair because it was cold outside and I was doing stuff in the yard, so I just threw a hat on. But I was pulling my hair out because I had probably 5 or 6 different titles. I like to, even with the Tiles albums, we like to get some outside input on titles and artwork and stuff. So nothing was working. If I liked something, Terry didn't like it too much. Or if I liked something, because we knew I was going to release it on Laser's Edge. So I was engaging Ken, the label owner. I said, well, what do you think of this, that? So there was just absolutely no consensus could be found for the longest time. And I finally, I can't, there's a line in one of the songs, Hiding in Plain Sight, because you look at song titles and phrases within the lyrics for title possibilities. So that one really finally jumped out. And Hugh had this general artwork for one of the other titles. And I told him that I think we've settled on Hiding in Plain Sight. He went back and looked because I've got probably 12 versions of the other covers for the other titles. And and this just fit perfectly. So I don't want to give away, because Hugh Syme, there's multiple meanings are waiting there, for your discovery. But what I will say is, you've got the black crumpled piece of paper. So you can see it, but it's not jumping out at you, right? So it's kind of hiding in plain sight. And some of the people that have written, which I'm really quite gratified about, that they've said that the lyrics have resonated with them. And the unfortunate thing is so many of the guests and much of what I've heard so far, you feel really bad because you don't want people, in one way, you don't want people to have the lyrics resonate with them, right? Because then that means they've had those experiences with dementia or Alzheimer's. But and then the colors, some people have had some really interesting interpretations, but I prefer not to unlock the key or unlock the code, except for kind of the obvious. And inside the artwork is typical top quality Hugh Syme. He likes to go off on different tangents, so he's got lots of interesting little artwork features inside the booklet and on the CD and the clear tray and everything. But it's so much fun to work with Hugh. I can see now why he and Neil Peart became such great friends over the years, because you can't have a conversation with Hugh and not learn something. Besides his musical experience and experience with all of the album covers he's done with so many iconic bands, it's just, you block out 2 hours because Hugh likes to talk, which is cool. And then you have these great conversations and you get this great artwork sent to you and stuff. And it's really quite thrilling, I guess you could say.
I like the one. There was one that was included in the press kit of it's like a cliff, and there's the water in the backdrop, and you're kind of looks like you're taking a selfie almost like near the cliff. Yet, at first glance of the picture, you don't catch it, but then you look closer and you're like, "Ooh, look at that's and I couldn't remember the name of it. I had to Google it. A penny farthing bike, far in the background." Right. So, any perspective on that you want to share?
Well, Hugh used a lot of those old English penny farthing bicycles for the artwork we did for Pretending to Run, which was a big double album, and it was a 36-page booklet. And he was very generous with his time because he knows kind of the financial capabilities of a band or like Tiles or a project like mine as a solo project. Um, so he puts in a lot of extra stuff that he probably would charge other bands for. But if you're a Hugh Syme fan and you see the work he's done with Dream Theater and over the years, of course with Rush, and he's still doing quite a few album packages. He kind of links his projects together. So you might notice that there's birds. He's been on a bird kick for a while, and he's also been on the penny farthing kick since
Hmm.
the late 90s. He used it on the cover of an album by Arena. So he just does that kind of stuff and drops it in to kind of catch your eye and make you wonder, well, how does this connect with what's going on? It's not because he can write them. I don't know if anybody ever could have written those things.
Hey, maybe your dad could have.
I don't know. Maybe. Um,
Well, talking about the guest musicians, and I want to go through all of the tracks, and you could comment on each of them. But you know, at the top of the hour, Chris, you mentioned that a lot of the genesis of these songs was already created in the form of demos. So sounds to me like you had some of the core songs put together, but then piece the puzzle together. What happens? Terry and Hugh are there. And then you say, you know what, a track needs something here, or do you go out and say, you know what, I have a personal relationship with Michael Sadler, and I would love, because he's my friend, to bring him on my album, and we're going to talk about where he can contribute. Because you go down the list, you have Michael Sadler, you have Alex Lifeson, you have Peter Frampton, you have three members of Jethro Tull, Martin Barre, Doane Perry. You have Kim Mitchell from Max Webster, Jeff Kollman, who's a friend of our show. We interviewed him about 6 months ago for his latest solo album, 2023 AD. Members of Porcupine
there
Tree,
he
and
is.
on and on and on. There's Jeff. Look at that. Isn't that a great album?
What a coincidence. Yeah.
Great guy.
Anyway,
Great
sorry,
guy.
I didn't mean to I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
no,
Sorry.
absolutely. Go ahead. No, floor is yours.
Oh, well, over the years, I've gotten together with Terry periodically, even though maybe there wasn't an album project in the works, and I'll just go there and demo some stuff so that it's captured, memorialized, and he'll put a little drum programming track to it, and then I probably at that point will have roughed in some kind of vocal line. I just humming, no lyrics or anything. And so, like I said a little bit earlier, there was this collection of songs, and there's another four songs that will be included on the vinyl release for next year, which I'll talk about that a little later. And because I don't sing, I knew I would be asking people to sing. So there were going to be, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 vocalists, however many I could coax into participating. And from that point, the other guest, I needed a bass player. I've been friends with Kevin Chown since the early 90s. Just such a phenomenal musician and bass player. Um, Same thing with drummers. Doane Perry's one of my favorite drummers. Shane Gallus from Cosmo Squad, that's one of Jeff Kollman's projects, phenomenal drummer. And I'm a big fan of drummers. So same thing with Jimmy Keegan from Spock's Beard.
Mhm.
A local guy, Ben Riley, local to Toronto, local for Terry. So as a song needed musicians, that's when I started to think about bass and drums and keyboards and vocalists and backing vocalists. Um, and I thought, well, I got some guitar playing friends that would sound great on this song. Not that I wouldn't have been happy to do some extra lead work because that's what I do too. But I thought, this is a great opportunity to just branch out and get people involved. I've been friends with Jeff Kollman, you know, way back in the early mid 90s when he was in Edwin Dare, and Tiles would do shows around Toledo and Detroit with Edwin Dare.
Yep.
I've known him for a long time, and he's such a phenomenal guitar player. So that's where the guitar players started coming in. And it was a mixture of Terry's connections and my connections. I know the publicist who's worked a lot with Jethro Tull, so she helped make contacts with Doane and Martin Barre and John O'Hara, the current keyboardist. Terry actually had done projects with Michael Sadler, and I've always been a Saga fan and love his voice. So I thought, well, geez, hopefully, Terry's stamp of approval that this is a legitimate project would entice Michael. And then Alex Lifeson had played on the Tiles album from 2008, Flypaper. And we asked him if he'd participate on Pretending to Run, and he said, no, it's been too soon. So when we approached him for one of the songs on this album, he was ready to do it. And of course, Terry's still friends with and had been friends with these guys all over the years, even though he stopped with the production relationship. So Alex joined in, and Terry did a lot of the early Kim Mitchell albums, and Kim Mitchell has been on every Tiles album since 2004. So, and he plays so having these people at my disposal, I just asked them, and I think it helped the charitable nature of the project, because most people, nobody technically charged money for it.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody was going to incur a studio expense, I would pay the studio expense. And some of the guys that aren't a Michael Sadler or a Peter Frampton or an Alex Lifeson, they're still career musicians making a living. So I didn't expect Jeff to do it for free. So I gave most everybody a little bit of something for helping out. But I think the charitable nature of the project really brought a lot of people on board, which was pretty cool. I feel like an Alan Parsons or something,
Yeah.
all these rotating cast of great musicians. And I'm not comparing myself to Alan Parsons, but
Right.
the way the Alan Parsons project tends to be put together. So
Yeah.
and there's a lot of other people. If you want to go song by song, I'll stop there, and we can be a little bit more systematic about stuff.
Yeah, we'll get into the track. So appreciate that, Chris. Going like before we get into the songs, like just how much of the lyrical content, like did you pen most of the lyrics, or did Terry and Hugh, maybe some of the other players come in, or was this mainly you coming in with these ideas? And then the second part of this question is, of the 11 tracks that are on, let's say, the CD, I assume this is like a storyline. It's in sequential order from sort of warning signs, which is discovery stage of the disease, all the way through. Is that kind of what your expectation was, like to cover the journey from the beginning sort of to the end?
Not exactly. It ended up being a little bit more coincidental, which I think just the nature of the topics at hand kind of lent itself to a little bit of a sequence. But the sequence was primarily designed so the music flowed nicely. And that was Terry's job. I couldn't figure out a running order. I could, but it wouldn't be as good as what Terry can intuitively put together. But you bring up a good point, because one of the songs, the lyrics were written by my friend from way back in the college days, like 35 plus years ago by now, Terry Sampson. You can't have too many Terrys in your project, apparently. So my daughter, when she was young, was a big Winnie the Pooh fan. So she bought this soundtrack, The Great Adventure or something. So I'm just kind of, looking at for whatever reason, looking at the credits. And all of a sudden I see a song written by Terry Sampson. And I thought, geez, could that be the Terry Sampson that I know from college? We used to play in the dorms and coffee houses and stuff. And he had gone out to Los Angeles and actually had a very successful career as a songwriter in the pop and R&B, uh, those types of artists.
Hmm.
So I got in touch with him and he was up for collaborating. I sent him the rough draft of a song and a melody line, and he took that. And because we live in a digital world, all of the songs have been manipulated since however they were sitting in the computer initially.
Hmm.
And his mom had suffered from dementia. So again, it was an opportunity for him to participate. And he asked if he could write some lyrics. And I said, well, certainly. And his song is The Heart of You.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the song Peter Frampton is on. And when the song was pretty much done, it just needed some lead guitar. So when Peter heard it, he was really enthusiastically willing to participate, because he had a number of people in his family that had suffered from Alzheimer. And just the nicest guy in the world, right? All the stories you hear are true. Truly just a nice guy. And it was so thrilling to hear, his parts, because, it's really quite a privilege. But just imagine being on the receiving end of all of these people's great music and hearing it for the first time. It's like, oh, well, there's a Martin Barre guitar solo. And now we get to, what did Peter Frampton do? And what did Alex Lifeson do? So there was always that sense of like Christmas. It was Christmas Day every time somebody would send a track in. Now I lost my place. So
Well,
lyrics.
and yeah, well, so hold on, Chris, to the point of that, as a listener on the other end of it, again, the first time I heard it, yeah, I got my little notes, but I didn't necessarily cheat on the notes. I said, okay, well, let's have a spin on this album, put it in the car and hear what you hear, right? Like, and then you go back and you say, oh, okay. And I'll tell you a little bit about like some of my misunderstandings about Alex Lifeson, where later on I was like, oh, that's Alex. Oh, no, it's not Alex. But on The
Mhm.
Heart of You, let's just talk about that track. I love that track because to me, that's like it feels like a radio song, like an FN friendly rock and roll track. It has that arena rock feel to it, the big catchy chorus. And again, the lyric, I carry the heart of you every single step to be part of you. I will never forget. Now, my interpretation of this, Chris, is, like the old cliche, when you lose somebody, they try to say, hey, don't be sad that that person's gone, but be happy it happened. Be happy you were there for it, right? And in a sense, I took this one as like, this is the way for maybe you accepting and reflecting back about all the good in your life and the relationship that you had with your dad, and what you carry forward. It was like some self-reflection, but in a positive way. So that was what I took out of it. It made me feel good. It hit my heart nicely.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. Terry's lyrics, because of Terry Sampson, because of his experience with his mom's dementia and the frustration that you kind of, as either the caregiver or the close family associations, he'd say something to her, and then the next few minutes she'd ask the same question. She wouldn't remember,
Mhm.
all of that kind of stuff. And then it's not unusual for people with those diseases to go through a period where they get really frustrated and can possibly get angry because that things just aren't working, and they still have enough uh, mental capabilities to know that this is kind of what's happening.
Mm.
And so he addressed that a little bit, but turned it into probably the most positive song on the CD. In fact, I was just at Terry Brown's place this weekend, finishing up the songs that will be on the vinyl. And we're creating a whole different running order. So it's a whole different listening
Mm.
experience, because we want everybody's money twice, right?
No,
Just a joke.
no, I
Um,
know.
and we took a different approach, and that running order has The Heart of You as the last song. So
Mm,
it kind of ends on, all right, well, now here's all of these lyrics about these experiences. And instead of ending like the CD does on White Dandelions, which is, you know, we can talk about that a little later, but that was a rather some tough lyrics. We'll end the vinyl listening experience on kind of an up note for as much as it can be up, the
yeah.
memories, the fond memories and that you carry forward from your parents.
Well, the other track, and I know we're going a little out of order, but the other track that I think that touched me was "Wrinkle in Time." I mean, the lyric "walk side by side in a silent way, louder than any words." It's the unspoken truce, right? And imagining, I'm thinking about this in a sequential order, but I took this as maybe this is the point in time where the relationship that you had with your dad, maybe it's no longer verbal, it's nonverbal, right? But the love is still there, and this one actually I got a little choked up like thinking about that because it's an unspoken bond that you might have with each other, right? You don't lose love of 50, 60 years just because the person can't speak. And you have to believe in a higher power that higher power is keeping you guys connected. Those lyrics and then of course the music adds to it. It's got this proggy radio rock feel again with big harmonies, a lot of melodies, the bass work sticks out, and the vocals amazing. So that one touched me just the same. I love that track too.
Well, thanks once again. I appreciate that, and you're a perceptive guy because part of and some of the little bit phrases and things come from different experiences. It's not like one experience and then you write about it.
Yeah.
It's kind of an amalgamation of different things in a lot of cases. And when we finally had my dad in an assisted living facility, and he stopped talking eventually, he still was kind of happy. And we would go visit and in the spring and summer and the fall, when weather was nice, we'd walk around, take him out and walk around the outside of the facility. And he wouldn't talk, and I would say stuff because you just don't know what's going on in their minds. So you can't really assume anything. So I would talk to him, but he couldn't talk back. And the musically, yeah, that's a fun tune. I've had a couple people pinpoint some Rush comparisons, and I can hear I got a little bit of a Grace Under Pressure guitar sound going on that one. So um,
Well, speaking of Grace Under Pressure, since you bring it up, the
uh,
song Secret Adversary. I don't know if you have Easter eggs, if this is the Easter egg tester for your fans, but there's two Easter eggs on that one. Ruff's references. So you reference both Grace Under Pressure and then you reference The Enemy Within from the album Grace Under Pressure. So I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it took me about 5 listens, but I finally caught it.
hmm. It may have been subconscious. And when I saw it pop out, of course, I've listened to so many hours of Rush that once it's out on the computer screen or if I wrote it out on paper, I would notice something like that. Because there's, a lot of people certainly have been influenced by Neil's lyrics, his style, and some of the topics and stuff. But I have to confess, I didn't do it on purpose to
Right.
see if people were paying attention. Um,
Well, that makes it even cooler then. And this was the track I mentioned prior without reading the liner notes. When I heard the riff, I said, "Oh, that's Alex right there. That's a Rush riff." And then I said, "Oh no, that's not a Rush. That's not Alex on there." So, so you had us fooled there. Now, is that you playing guitar that main riff?
yeah, kind of lost in the shuffle is the fact that I actually play some instruments on the album. So I
Right.
play
We
all the
forget
I
about
play
you,
all the
Chris.
rhythm,
It is your album
right?
by all.
So I play all the rhythm guitars. Other people contribute some rhythm guitar. lots of guests for lead guitar. So I'm guilty as charged if there's a bit of a Rush vibe there on Wrinkle in Time. Um, the funny story is I hadn't played any leads on anything, no lead guitar whatsoever. And Ken from the label asked me, he said, well, did you play any leads? And I said, no. So what? And he said, well, you're not so bad of a guitar player, and it's got your name on it. Maybe you should. Do you have any songs that still need lead guitar? And I said, yes, just one. And that happened to be Wrinkle in Time. So I did do my own lead work on one song, but I was kind of like a kid in a candy store, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I can get, like I've already said, if I can get uh, Jeff Kollman or Martin Barre or Kim Mitchell to do a solo, what a great thing, right? And some songs don't have leads on them, and I just kind of lost track of the fact that maybe I needed to, do a little bit of my own work in that area.
Yeah. Well, those are good tracks. So we kind of went out of order, Chris. We kind of covered the middle of the album, but let's go back to the top now. Just start at the top. Warning signs, right? There's a video out for warning signs. Well-intended alibis cover up the warning signs. That's a strong lyric. I wait to listen, but I cannot speak. So this is that nice mid-pace rocker. It's got the signature Jeff Kollman sound, the guitar playing, the melodies, all those things that I love about him. And I'm not a guitar player at all, but I love that kind of style of work that he has. And of course, you have Michael Sadler on this. So maybe talk about this song and the lyrical content and anything you want to share about this one.
I sure will. As I mentioned, Terry had the connection with Michael Sadler, so Terry and Michael cut the vocals in Toronto. And so essentially, Jeff and Kevin and Shane are Cosmo Squad. So it's really like
Mm-hmm.
it's Cosmo Squad, the band, with the singer from Saga.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a uh, great track, lots of energy. Um, because Shane, there's a reason he's such a popular drummer, is because he's so good. Same thing with all of them, of course. But lyrically, you're right. That line kind of sums it up, and that was reflecting the experience that my family and I had in my dad's early stages.
Mm-hmm.
Why is he acting that way, or that seems kind of weird, or why did he do that type of thing? So it's essentially some of the little vignettes or explanation of these were the warning signs that in hindsight um, we missed. Um,
Yeah.
but it's a fun song. I always felt that it would be a great lead-off track, because how can you go wrong with, you know, putting the needle down and having Michael Sadler come out of the speakers. He's just such a great vocal.
Yeah, totally. And then the second track is equally as strong, The Darkest Hour, right? And this is call it your first single in your video. Before the clouds give way as darkest hours fade, but it's got this groovy bass. And I don't know maybe what the right term is, but there's something about the meter. It's got and then he kind of has this mandolin sound and a little flute coming in for color, kind of have that Jethro Tull feel to it. And this is, Martin and Doane, perform on this one. So, I mean, talk a little bit about this track. In a sense, was this about you and your family and perhaps your dad at that point sort of coming to accept the situation to say, okay, the signs were there, and now we're going to get diagnosed or we're going to treat this? And then what about the video? What did you guys set out to do in that video?
Musically, this is the song that probably has the most odd meter stuff in it. This and Wrinkle in Time, I guess. Maybe Slow to Crumble. And at this stage in my songwriting efforts, I don't really set out to, and I haven't for the longest time. When I was young, of course, everybody's like, oh, let's write this song in 7/8 or 12/8, some odd meter type doodad, 5/4. But this song had kind of an odd meter thing that when Kevin Chown did his bass part, which was added fairly early in the song's development and recording, he started just playing that riff over and over and forgetting about bar lines and stuff. So it gave it a real kind of propulsive feel to it. And once we had Doane Perry on board, because his dad had Alzheimer's, and so, you know, when I talk to these guys, the conversation would always drift to those types of experiences. But when he did his drum tracks, it's not just the drums. I think he sent Terry like 40 tracks of percussion and all kinds of embellishments and stuff. So it's a fairly dense arrangement. And the groove and stuff that he came up with just continued that feel of kind of the forward motion. And Martin Barre, I just, once we made contact with him, there was just the one section where you hear his guitar solo. He took it upon himself, fortunately, to add the flute, the mandolin, additional rhythm guitar swells in the verses and stuff. So he totally went to town. When I first heard that, I was pleasantly surprised, of course. He's a good flute player. And you think of Jethro Tull, you know, Ian Anderson is the flute player, of course. But Martin has kept up his chops over the years. And so he added a lot to that track. And you're right, The Darkest Hour is kind of that early period of where, geez, now we know what's happening. And a lot of the lines just deal with some of the feelings and the perceptions of, because there's no question, right? It's a death sentence. It's just a matter of when. So it's not like other diseases that are serious, but there's at least a chance of recovery. When you get diagnosed with Alzheimer's and dementia, it's just nothing you can do. So that was kind of where the darkest hour, and in the chorus, you know, where it says sideways drives the rain, I just tried to come up with some imagery to reflect on kind of that dark period of, okay, this is it. This is what's happening.
Yeah. Did Hugh, was Hugh involved with the video?
No, but you're right. Hugh was sprinkled throughout a lot of these songs on keyboards. Hugh was a fabulous keyboard player. And he's great at textures and arrangements and stuff. So it was fun to send some stuff to him, and he would put some great embellishments and little events and different things. But the videos were all done by the bass player in Discipline. He makes his livelihood working in that field of video, corporate video and different things. But as a musician, he's got a great feel for collecting the images that are going to reflect the lyrics and even maybe add some different meaning to it, because he could interpret it the way he wanted to. And there's a fourth video that's going to come out after the album is released, and I just showed it to Terry over the weekend, and Terry has been very complimentary about and they're just lyric videos to get the song out on YouTube. I don't mean just, but you know, it's not a big production video, or there was no band, so I couldn't really get a band to play and make it that kind of a video. So Matt Kennedy, who did the videos, he took the lyrics and was able to grab a lot of great imagery. So it's not just a vehicle it's not only a vehicle for getting the song on YouTube and you put the lyrics up there so people can relate to that, but the images really draw you in. So it's like, well, okay, there's a concept behind all of this, which was totally what he could capture in interpret out of the lyrics on those
Yeah,
songs.
and you watch the video. I've probably watched the videos twice, maybe three times, but unless you're really watching every second of it, if you're just putting it on and kind of taking it all in, you see something different each time, and something captures something in your brain, and you go, "Oh, what did that exactly mean? That girl in that particular spot of whatever she was doing," and then you start going, right? So it's always different,
Yeah.
each time around. Now, a song like "Living in the Night." Now, this one, it's got a bit of a different song arrangement, right? But before you talk about that, I got this like feeling out of it. It was like a peaceful sense out of the music. It was like, oh, there's something peaceful about this piece of music, and I don't know if that was intended to be portrayed that way, but it's almost like there's a peacefulness. You've accepted the situation at hand, and somehow, like maybe you just told yourself, you know what, all is going to be okay no matter what, right? But peace at last from the past. Perhaps the lyric adds to that, and it's got this bit of a like a Celtic feel, if I could, use that phrase. The strings and orchestrations come out. So first couple of songs, you got guitars, rock songs. Now you got, oh wow, different kind of piece of music here. So shows the diversity of what you were setting out to do.
It is. I'm a big fan of early Elton John and albums from the 70s where you didn't have to stick with a necessarily a consistent style. So when these songs came together, I didn't worry about whether a song like Living in the Night would not fit with songs like Warning Signs or Darkest Hour. I just hopefully they're good songs, and it creates an overall good listening experience because it's got some variety to it. But this is a song that to me is reminiscent a little bit of Jethro Tull. It's in 6/8, so it's got that lilting type feeling to it. And I even used the Ian Anderson signature Martin guitar, acoustic guitar on it. So and John O'Hara from Jethro Tull, he's a great arranger in addition to being a great piano player. So the piano you hear is John, all the string arrangements and orchestration you hear is John. And Tim Mischling, who plays the oboe and English horn, we used him on Pretending to Run, and he's just such a phenomenal player. I mean, he's never out of tune. He never makes a mistake. He does a lot of this stuff off the top of his head. And when you can pick out the oboe or whichever instrument he happens to be using, just keep in mind that he's paying attention to the string arrangement, but he's kind of working on it as he goes along. And that makes it really special because he adds that extra element of melody to it. And this is the first song that Matthew Parmenter, he's the singer and songwriter in Discipline. So I always figured that I would, work Matthew pretty hard on this project. So he sings Living in the Night and White Dandelions, Second Ending. So he's got 3 songs on the CD, and he'll have 3 more songs on the vinyl. But he turns in a great vocal. And this features Ben Riley, the drummer from Toronto that Terry's close friends with. Great drummer. He was able to grab that pulse out of the song, and the drums really accentuate that. But lyrically, you're right. There was a period when my dad just seemed to exist, but it was kind of a I don't want to say happy, because he didn't have the consciousness, I don't think, to really know, but whatever was happening, he was, kind of seemed happy and upbeat. But then again, once you really know, it's just one of the phases in the linear progression of how things play out. And I saw that, and I kind of kept, I don't want to say capitalized, but I used that general concept to put those lyrics together. Um, so musically it's a happy music. And the lyrics have a slight positive outlook on it, but essentially it's never a good thing.
Yeah.
And we really, because the music tends to come first with me, or if not the music and the melody lines come together, but not the lyrics. I'm not Bernie Taupin, uh, unfortunately. Uh, so the one benefit to that, I guess you could say, is that the music would help inform maybe what the lyrics would deal with, uh, topic wise. And we also Terry and I, we were also able to say this person would sound good here. It wasn't just, throw darts at a board and say, well,
Mhm.
we'll put this person here, there. And it was, we matched them with the type of song, the style of the song. So certainly Living in the Night benefited by that particular group of musicians, and John's orchestral arrangements and stuff were pretty remarkable. It turned out really good.
Yeah. So the song's second ending, you referred to it earlier. I know we talked about the tracks that preceded it already, but this one's it's a tough one. It's a good listen, but it's a tough one to grasp for me because there's a great deal of tension in the song. It's like the impending doom or something about it. It's an uncomfortable song musically. Um, but there's moments in there where there is some spirituality or something in there when the lyric leave light behind for the second time as the ghosts of yesterday finally pass away. Um, if I have this right, I assume when you refer to your dad dying twice, this means maybe the first death was, when he was diagnosed and the Alzheimer's got seriously. So his original being was gone, but his physical presence was still there. And of course, the second death is when his physical state deteriorated and eventually passed away. Um, so amazing. If I have that right, like an amazing way that you put that concept together into a storyline, into lyrics, and into music. This is also the song that does have Alex Lifeson that I guessed incorrect. Um, and I think, though, that's probably Alex that comes in on the back end, right? About the minute 30 left in the song mark. So take us through this track.
You're right. Again, you missed your calling as a college professor to look at lyrics and poetry and stuff and glean the essence out of it. So, but you're right. That's exactly it. The second ending, the mind technically dies, and then the body dies. Um, this song its germ was the day I found out he had passed away. My family and I were vacationing in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and we knew he was kind of coming. It was getting close. Um, and I was with the kids swimming in the ocean or something. And all of a sudden, this clouds, because it's hot. That's the way it is there in the summertime. And there was just a light breeze, and then all of a sudden, these clouds kind of showed up, and a very strong breeze kind of came out of nowhere, and it really caught my attention and took me by surprise. And I didn't think that much of it, but I when I found out that that was roughly the time my dad had passed away, I thought, well, geez, what an odd coincidence. And so that's the lines you mentioned. That was the experience that where they came from. And so Alex is on the choruses, and he adds some acoustic guitar along with mine. And he does these really, you wouldn't recognize it because there's no solo. So it makes it a little tougher to
Mhm.
pinpoint just exactly. But he does these really beautiful atmospheric soundscapes. And I'm trying to talk Terry into doing an alternate mix that strips everything back and kind of focuses on Alex's parts because they just are, they move so beautifully through the chord changes and of course you can hear them, but all, it's not unusual for little details to get lost in a mix. So when I heard them all by themselves, I thought, wow, it's too bad. It's too bad some of that's getting a little covered up by other stuff. But it was the great thing about all of these musicians is it's like they didn't say, oh well, I don't really know this guy, or oh well, it's a kind of a small independent project. I'll put some stuff down and it'll be okay. Every single one of them just expended the amount of effort that they would have for their own projects. So I'm really grateful for that. And Alex's all of the stuff he sent Terry, I don't think Terry used all of it because he provided stuff so that you had an opportunity to pick and choose what you thought might be most suitable. But I really do hope that we can pull out an alternate mix just for fun. For Alex Lifeson fans to hear that side of him really would be quite exciting, I would think. Because you think of the power chords and all of the great guitar he's known for in the Rush context, and maybe some of the additional side projects he's gotten involved in, but you don't expect these. You would, in some cases, you wouldn't even know it's a guitar, and the fact that he's able to coax all of these sounds out of his guitar, his big, vast sonic landscapes is pretty cool.
And that's kind of how he said his post-career or Rush career wanted to be, right? He wanted to not get tied down to a particular sound or just recreate another rock band. He wanted to go out there and just explore, and whatever comes his way, he contributes in whatever way, and we see a different side of him, right? But Rush fans, they're desperate for anything from anybody, right? So
Right.
if you put an alternate mix of that song out there, they'd be all over that.
Well,
So
Terry's pretty busy, right? He's got to mix these last 3 songs plus the ones in guitar instrumental. But I think eventually I'll coax him into doing a mix that really features, because they stand on their own, really. But
yeah.
Terry didn't think we should strip out all the other guitars and stuff.
So Chris, there's a block of songs that follow after Second Ending. This is probably self-reflection, how you coped and handled your family after your father's passing, safe house, isolation, slow to crumble. I mean, safe house, I closed my eyes and I said, wow, this sounds like something off of like Pink Floyd's The Wall or The Final Cut. Slow to Crumble's more of a bluesy rocker, with that lyric, I keep to myself by building a shell on a wall that's slow to crumble. But that one's cool too musically, because you got a little bit of slide guitar and there's some organ synth sounds in there, and then you get to the back end. And I have to be honest, because I want you to open up about these. I've had a hard time absorbing the Wilderness Years and White Dandelions, although the music is different. Like in Wilderness Years, it's kind of a soft rock track. It's uplifting, it's emotional, has a bit of a ballad feel, and then it's got kind of like some yacht rock saxophone featured in it. And then White Dandelions is kind of moody, jazzy. It's a sleepy track. It's very atmospheric. And then the trumpet comes in and piano. So like, it was like you went way out in left field on these last 4 tracks, but you take us through some of this.
Okay, Safe House. There's actually 2 versions of Safe House. The other version was subtitled Asylum, and Matthew Parmenter sings that. And the isolation version that you hear on the CD is Tim Bonus from No Man. He partners with Steve, has partnered with Steven Wilson. They're friends from years ago. And I had become a fan of Tim's quite a while ago. He's got the very distinctive vocal style that I thought would really fit this track perfectly. And then Colin Edwin, the former bass player in Porcupine Tree, he plays some of the bass because it's pretty sparse till the near the end of the song, and he does a lot of those great sonic textures and things that really add a great deal of atmosphere to it. I guess Safe House was kind of from the inside of the person with the dementia or the Alzheimer's, and they're kind of feeling some frustration. They're feeling safe in a familiar environment, but they're experiencing some of those frustrations that we talked about a little bit earlier. And it almost metaphorically, it's like they're trying to run away from it, like disappear through the floor is one of the lines. And it just meant to, when people say they fade into the background, I just thought that was kind of another way to say that.
Mm.
But this is the one song I actually play piano on. And Hugh does just a wonderful, they're keyboards, but they're just a great string arrangement I was pretty happy with it the way it was. And then I sent a few songs to Hugh because he said, well, I'd like to hear some stuff. And he said, would you mind if I, play around with some stuff? And I said, no, knock yourself out. And he came back with just the string arrangement you hear, which is really quite poignant. I don't know if that helps.
That adds a lot of color to it. Thank you.
Slow to Crumble, the same thing. It's just kind of a metaphor for, the person is. I maybe kind of mixed some of the different aspects of the Alzheimer's dementia afflicted individual because it harkens back a little bit to the warning signs. And as the person, I watched my dad. He was totally plausible with explaining some of his behaviors. If we'd ask him, why did you go there? Or why did you do that? That kind of stuff. I can't give any super specific examples. And he always had an explanation. For the longest time, he had an explanation that, like I said, was plausible. Mm-hmm. So Slow to Crumble kind of combines a little bit of that, build the wall. Because as I reflected on it, I'm sure he was trying to, maybe even subconsciously protect himself from what's going on. It's like, well, geez, am I going to walk out in front of traffic, or am I, are they going to take my car keys away, and different things like that. And it's paired with a fairly upbeat song. It's one of the more upbeat songs for sure. And it features the two gentlemen in Crownlands. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
I am not, no.
They've gotten to be quite the Rush fan favorite amongst Rush. Well, a favorite amongst Rush fans.
Okay.
Just two of them. The drummer sings, and Kevin, the instrumentalist, does all the other instruments. Their stuff is great. I recommend it highly. They've toured with Greta Van Fleet and Jack White, and they did some shows for Kiss. So their careers they're young guys, so their career's on the upswing. But so Cody has such a great voice, and Terry has worked with him, and he said, well, do you think we could see if Crownlands guys would participate? I said, sure, it'd be a great tune for him. It's always been a favorite song of mine. Great bass part by Kevin. And the one guy, he'll kill me since I haven't even mentioned him yet. Well, he won't kill me, but he'll be unhappy. is Mark Michael. He's Jeff Kollman worships the ground he walks on. He's an artist from Toledo, was in the Pillbugs, was one of his popular incarnations. And he's actually, the Pillbugs are Mike Portnoy's top 10 bands of all time. I mean,
Okay.
not just, because he discovered them and he's kind of on his playlist, but Mike has said not too long ago that the Pillbugs are in his top 10 of all time. They're very creative, like a very progressive Beatles
Okay.
sound, or maybe Jellyfish, that kind of pop rock songwriting. Anyway, Mark's a great instrumentalist, great songwriter, great vocalist, and people keep comparing his vocals on Darkest Hour to David Bowie. It's got kind of, which I hadn't thought of actually, but he's got a little bit of that vibe. So the reason I bring him up is because I needed to, but he also does a lot of backing vocals on all the songs, helping come up with those arrangements also. So Wilderness Year, I'm trying to be brief, but I'm not sure I'm successful.
Okay.
Wilderness Years was, just that period of time where you know what's happening and the disease is progressing and the years go by. And so it's obviously it's kind of like being in the wilderness. It does have, now I know you mentioned the White Dandelions does have some jazz elements to it, but Wilderness Years too, with some major seventh chords, and so it's got kind of that lighter verses, and then the choruses come in really nice and heavy. And throughout all of these songs, I wrote a lot of them in alternate tunings, capos and drop D tuning and different things. I was going through a Keith Richards alternate tuning type phase, and it's like, oh, all of a sudden this chord that I would play here, once I change the tuning of the strings, I can play the same chord and it's a different chord and it sounds cool. So it was really quite inspirational as a songwriting approach. So that's kind of the quick version of the lyrics. And another person I haven't mentioned, see, there's almost 30 people. It's never ends. Randy McStein sings lead vocals on 3 of the songs, and he's fairly well known in the progressive rock world, not the major progressive rock world like, Yes and Kansas and Rush, Jethro Tull. And since he recorded these songs, he was tapped to be the Porcupine Tree touring guitarist on the last tour they did. And now he's going to go out with Steven Wilson's solo tour as the touring guitarist. So his star is on the rise. And he has a great album coming out November 1st too, his solo album. So he does a lot of the great lead vocals, and Wilderness Years is one of them. And Jimmy Keegan from Spock's Beard, great drum part. And Rick Morrison is Terry's buddy from Toronto. And it was Terry's idea for the sax solo. I wasn't quite sold on it until I heard it. And I thought, you know what, that really, for me, it added another little different, unique element to the entire listening experience. So I know I'm going long on all this stuff. I'm sorry.
You're good. You're okay.
So you whatever needs to be left on the editing room is
not at all. This is great insight.
certainly okay. And White Dandelions, the 11th and final song of the album, is I had a real hard time with that last line, as you could probably imagine. I don't know if you want to tell your listeners or not, make it a surprise for them. I wasn't sure it was going to stand the test of time. And this story is directly from when we got back from the neurologist, and my dad took that. It was me and my mom, and my dad took that test, put the put the hands of the clock at 9:50 or whatever those other 10 questions were. And he got all of them wrong. He wasn't even close. So that was the lightning bolt moment. And my mom she did not handle it well, because it's of course distressing for her. She kept suggesting to the doctor that, well, no, that can't be happening. That's not what the problem is. It's something else. And so she was not accepting at first. And the reason that's relevant is because, and I live in the same town as my mom and dad. So I had gone to the appointment straight from work, and I followed him home, and my mom didn't come into the house, and my dad came into the house, and I followed him in. I was thinking to myself, well, this poor guy's just gotten his death sentence, right? And I don't know what he was really able to, if he was processing it or if he really understood. So this is about sitting at the kitchen table and talking to him and trying to, say something, anything that, which I don't think I probably did, because I didn't tell him he had it. I didn't tell him, oh, well, what do you think of that death sentence? You know, so I just tried to talk with him and see if he was really connecting the dots instead of just being dropped off alone at the house. So we sat there for a long time till my mom got home and said, that's where the white dandelions, that's the experience that relates to those lyrics. And white dandelion, it's just it's the dandelion going to seed and going away.
Yeah.
And the jazz, right? I was fired. I wrote this song on piano, and Matt Parmenter sang the vocals, and he said, "You know what? Really like this song. I think it should have a better piano part." Because I was just playing block chords and stuff, nothing too extravagant. And he's a very good piano player. And he said, "Well, do you mind if I try, doing some parts and seeing if you like them?" So he did some parts, and of course they were better. So we kept those, and that kind of moved things into a little bit more of a jazzier direction. I don't think it. I say that only because it's got a little flavor to it. It's not a jazz song, but all of a sudden we've got Jonathan Blake, who's a very well-known jazz drummer, plays with Kenny Barron and Tom Harrell, and I'm a big fan of his drumming.
Mm.
And then Walter White from the Detroit area, who you can hear, he did the horn arrangement and played all the horns, the trumpet, flugelhorn, trombone. And he played with Maynard Ferguson. So I'm a fan of
Okay.
jazz. So it was really great to have these guys on the track. And the drum part you hear is Jonathan's first take. He sent us 2 or 3 takes, and the first one was just where the magic was. So there, you've made it through the endurance test.
Now, Chris, I have to ask you, like, how, I don't know if your mom's still with you, but like, I mean, this is an amazing piece of work. Like I said at the top of the hour, it's personal, and that's what makes it so special and different than any, other album that somebody can put out, which is why I wanted to talk to you about it. But how did your family receive this body of work? And have you shared this with, let's say, the community, the Alzheimer's communities? There's probably lots of, you know, uh, organizations that probably could appreciate something like this because they deal with it and they live it every single day. Have you educated, have you given back your body of work to that community, and how has it all been received?
Since we're in the early stages, the connections with the local Alzheimer's associations, they're a work in progress. We're planning to do maybe a listening party,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe I'll sit up there and do some kind of Q&A stuff. And that would be in association with the local organization. So I think a project like this, it's going to have a pretty long shelf life, fortunately. And those opportunities and those connections, I think, hopefully will grow and develop as time goes on and word gets out. As far as my family goes, well, my mom passed away. I was so mad at her. She passed away 4 months after my dad.
Mm.
So hers was a total surprise. So she has been gone for 12 or 13 years, just like my dad has. So I don't have to worry about throwing her under the bus. Just joking. So we'll see. I think my dad's sister, I think she'll, I mean, you know, she's 86 or 7, so the music is not going to matter too much. But my cousins and my dad's side of the family have taken an interest. Certainly, they haven't heard anything that hasn't already been released to the public. So, and my brother and sister have heard some of the songs along the way, but they haven't heard or seen the completed package. So I didn't air any dirty laundry. I mean, there's not really any dirty laundry to air necessarily, but it's the response is teaching me a lot, because people are connecting with it. And it's not as though I didn't hope people wouldn't connect with it. I didn't think about what would happen, if you know what I mean. Because I was just, this is just what had to come out. And the fact that it's, you know, you're able to pick out these things and relate them to yourself, you know, it's gratifying. And some of the other people I've talked to, the same thing. But like I said, I haven't figured out how to handle it, because you don't want people to connect because you don't want them to have experienced this stuff. But if and once they have, then at that point, I feel glad that it means something to the listener in that regard.
And in a sense, like me, I've, you know, have not had anybody in my family with Alzheimer's, but again, I know surface level about it, but in a sense, listening to this, maybe it taught me a little bit, maybe it got my curiosity interested in understanding a little bit more about it. But again, from the human factor, it doesn't matter, Chris, whether this is this disease or something else. I felt like I could connect on a human level to what you were going through. And that's the most important piece of art. But Chris, before I let you go, you talked about the charitable aspect, and also, you know, take some time to tell the fans where they can buy this, when it's going to be out, and what your socials are, and then also a little bit more about your plans to release additional tracks that'll eventually be out down the line on vinyl.
Okay, I should have taken notes. The album comes out November 1st, which is this coming Friday, based on when you and I are talking. The CD is available on Bandcamp, both the 16-bit and the 24-bit high resolution, and then, of course, the CD, and that's with the Laser's Edge Bandcamp page. I'll have copies for sale at chrisherin.com and tiles-music.com. Amazon has it. The record company actually has a big retail business. So you could go to lasercd.com and get the CD there, plus all kinds of great progressive rock that you'll never see in a store. And if you have international fans, Burning Shed in the UK is carrying it, and Just for Kicks in Germany. I'm sure there's other places, but I don't always get informed of everything. And of course, the Alzheimer's, alz.org. They're very easy to search and track down. There's a couple different variations, but that's the main organization, and they have other activities, the Walk to End Alzheimer's. So I put those in my Facebook. Every time I post something, I put those links in there. So the Facebook is just Chris Herin. And I post stuff over on the Tiles Facebook page and Instagram. And I'm a little bit behind the times when it comes to all of the social media stuff. If it wasn't for checking the box and having Facebook post directly to Instagram, I probably would have trouble with that too. A little bit of Twitter or X, I'm trying to get that going. So what did I miss?
Yeah. How about the bonus tracks? A little bit about the bonus tracks.
Right. Now these weren't leftover songs. They were just songs that we felt 55 minutes was long enough for the CD. And so thanks to your friend Jeff Kollman and a couple other people, I noticed that they will release the vinyl a little bit later than the CD and put bonus tracks on them. And I thought, well, that's a neat idea. Because a 55-minute CD, right, you're kind of caught in limbo. It's too long for just two sides of an album. So then if you got to go to a third side and make it a double album, then you've got a blank side. So I thought, well, the thing to do is now we can use these songs that we didn't put on the CD and integrate them, like I said way earlier. It'll be a totally different running order. It'll start with warning signs, and from then on, it's different. So it'll be a different listening experience with the bonus tracks integrated. They're not just going to be flopped on the end. They'll be part of the running order. So Terry is mixing those. They were mostly done. I went there this weekend to add a couple little doodads, but
okay.
And there'll be four bonus tracks, 3 real songs and 1 little guitar instrumental thing. And hopefully that'll be for Record Store Day in April.
Okay. All right. So not too distant future. Well, Chris, this has been a really, really cool hour plus talking to you. I wish you best with this project. This one it's different. It's special. You know, I don't know. I just feel this kinship towards the undertaking that you took on to do this. There's the human factor here that you can't, it goes unmatched. So I thank you for doing that. And I wish you best of luck with this project. So just a reminder, head over to metalmayhemroc.com, sign up for our email newsletter. It's the best way to stay updated on new podcast episodes, interviews on our YouTube channel, and concert reviews. And please join us on Monday nights on our live radio show on Metal Devastation Radio. And of course, if you like what we're doing, please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. So for my guest, Chris Herin, I'm Metal Walt, and this is Metal Mayhem ROC.
Metal for life.
Thank you for listening to Metal Mayhem ROC. Check out our website at metalmayhemroc.com for information on podcasts, archives, links to all our live radio shows, and all sorts of info. Please like, follow, and share with everyone, even your non-metal friends. And always remember to keep it heavy.